Whee! All right, guys. Hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. All right, so today we're continuing on with our topic of Von
I hear
Braun,
you.
part 2. Before we jump into the show, though, I don't have a poem to talk about today because it's a continuation of the same person. This is where we left off last time. Middle guy Von Braun, we'll dive into him shortly. But before we continue there, let me show you my face. Hold on. Hi. With my wonderful orbits background.
That's a fake background.
That is such a fake background. Agreed. The disembodied voice seems to take note that, it's not a real, I'm not actually out wherever. All right.
But you're not fake.
I'm not fake. That's true. Now, who is this voice and what are you listening to?
That's what we all want to know.
Okay, so you're listening to SG2 on Space, the only weekly space show. We've been out in the last 2 weeks due to personal travel. And then there was a hurricane, apparently. For those of you who are watching this live, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But the disembodied voice in the background, let me bring him on. There he is. Who is this guy? This guy's Leonard, and he's not talking. Hi. All right. Nice headband. I just noticed it. That's
Thank
incredible.
you.
I don't know how I missed that earlier.
That's my swag.
And your shirt too. It's very colorful.
This is my Route 66 shirt.
Oh, is it? Does this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, it says it. It says Route 66 right there. That's wonderful. All right. So, how's it going?
I was going to ask you the same thing. It's going just fine. We had quite an adventure in the last week with a big storm. People 10,000 years in the future that who will be reviewing this, they probably have like hurricanes every day, but right now they're kind of rare. So anyway, it was a big storm.
I'm guessing people 10,000 years in the future would know how to control the weather by then. That's my
that. But I had thought that it would be like it would be the robots would rule the world.
Okay, so to possible robots in the future or whomever's ruling the world, I don't know if Houston's even a city in your world anymore. It may be completely underwater for all I know. But regardless, back in the early 21st century, there is a city called Houston. And this is where we do our space show because there's a lot of space activities here.
Mm-hmm.
And
by the way, Houston was the first word that was uttered by a human on the moon.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh, well,
it was the very first word after they landed with the lander. It's not the first word that was, Houston, something. I forgot. Houston. The eagle has landed.
Yeah, the eagle has landed. Something like that. Yeah. And then the one small step for man quote, the quotable one. All right. Before I go on, I gotta say, hopefully you guys are subscribing, all that. Thank you to our supporters on patreon.com/SG2 on Space. Thank you, Kyle Baker, Sam Welsh, and John Grace for your kindly monthly donations. And anybody else who's willing to donate or at least just subscribe, share, please feel free. With all that said, I am going to leave the ticker running on the bottom.
Yes, please.
And with all that, let's jump into this topic of, I'm not going to go all the way back because otherwise we're just going to be repeating the same things we talked about in the previous episode. But for those of us, so for people watching, ideally you already saw part 1, since we're just going to go into part 2.
But if you didn't, I will have a little bit, we'll orient you.
Okay.
Yeah. Who did you want to talk about? I forgot.
Werher. I don't know German. Werher.
No. If you listen to we're going to be talking about Werher von Braun. And if you listen to him, you can find videos where he's interviewed and TV shows. And he was a media personality all the way back in the 1950s.
This guy in the middle.
The guy in the middle with the broken arm, that white, weird looking apparatus is actually, he had a broken arm.
It looks like an alien appendage.
Yeah, it's not. It's plaster. and the story about that. Why don't I just pick up the story if you want to?
The story.
So Werner von Braun was probably like the greatest. It's not an exaggeration to say that he was the greatest rocket scientist, rocket engineer, physicist of the 20th century. He invented the Saturn V rocket, which was used by the American space program to send astronauts to the moon in the 1960s and early 70s, and that was really the crowning achievement and ambition of his life ever since he was like a little boy. He was born in 1911, I think. So he's a product of the first paragraph of the 20th century, and he lived till 1977, I think. He died a little bit early. We could have used him for another 20 years, but
1912, March 23rd.
Yeah, 1912, March 23rd. Yeah, actually, that's in my notes, and I was looking right at it, and I and I said 1911.
1912, March 23rd in Würz's Post.
Right.
In Prussia.
And the interesting thing about him was that even when he was little boy, his mother gave him a telescope, and he got a book about rocket flight from a kind of an obscure scientist named Oberg, who was very influential among all those people. But the thing is, he got connected with the German army before the Nazi time, or just shortly before the Nazi time. He had a mentor named Dornberger, Walter Dornberger, who was a general in the German army. They were trying to do something like make rockets as weapons, like some kind of artillery, like a replacement for artillery. But von Braun had the ambition to fly rockets. He was not he was. Really, he was an opportunist in a certain way, or very focused on. Yeah, okay, he's a nice-looking kid. He was a handsome man, in my opinion, when he grew up. And this was him when he was little, and he had a couple of brothers and that kind of thing. They were aristocratic, they were high blood, German Teutonic people. And whatever that means, so there they are working with the rockets, and we kind of went over a lot of this, kind of roughly the last time.
This was Rudolf Nebel. That's an older guy, and then the younger assistant is Werner von Braun, carrying small missiles at the rocket launching site in Berlin.
Yeah, so this was them doing experimental work, but the German army paid for his PhD in 1931, 32, along that time. Then the Nazi people came along, they got elected, and they came into power. But he continued working for the German army because they gave him a lot of money, and he was only 24, 25 years old at the time, and they just recognized his talent for being able to walk the walk, as it were. He knew everything about rockets. He knew all about promoting things and so forth. So I wanted to pick up the story about in World War II when they were developing the V1 rocket, and things were not going well for the Germans at the point where I wanted to pick this up. They had the rocket laboratory was on an island called Peenemünde, and Peenemünde is at the mouth of a river called the Peene River. And
what name?
What?
That's Peenemünde.
Munda is mouth of the Peene River, and Peene actually. I don't know why I know this, but the word Peene is some kind of Slavic word. It's not a German word, and I'm not sure. I used to know what it meant, but never mind.
Yeah, the That's where they did the rockets.
That's where they did the rockets. They wanted some place that was overlooking the ocean because, you know.
This is what it looked like back then. So if you went there in 1943, this is what it looked like.
Yeah, probably. They the first time they got this rocket off the ground, at this time they called it the A4. Mm-hmm. And the A, they had the A1, A2, A3, A4, so forth. And the A means something in German, but I don't remember what it meant. But the German, the Nazis wanted to renamed it Vergelstenwaffen, which means something like vengeance weapon, or
it was meant to kill more people.
So
yes.
Yeah. So
but the von Braun, okay, didn't he say about how the rocket worked successfully but landed on the wrong planet?
Yes, and that actually got him arrested by the SS. The SS were the really bad Germans. I mean, they were really evil. They were run by a guy named
is it Himmler? I forget.
Heinrich Himmler. Thank you. And
history lesson.
Himmler wanted to. There's another German. Excuse me. There was another German in the hierarchy named Albert Speer, and he was originally an architect, and the Hitler, the head evil Nazi, wanted him to be in charge of like logistics and that kind of stuff. So he was in charge of this for a while, but Himmler didn't like him very much, and Himmler, like the SS, kind of wanted to be its own source of power, you know, in Germany at the time, and they were at war. So Himmler wanted to take this over. Von Braun, and you pronounce it Brown. That's the way he pronounced it. Just like we say Brown, he would say Brown.
Right.
And also he said his name was Werner. He just said Werner. Right. And he spoke English very fluently, very well. But that's beside the point. So he said that in I think early 43, Himmler came. He kind of made a secret visit by himself. And the interview I saw with von Braun was that Himmler drove his own car and came to the site, and he wanted to see what they were doing, and he launched a few rockets, and he launched 2 rockets, and both of them were not really that successful, but it was early. Himmler was very interested in the plan, and he said to and then later, like some months later, he came back on an official visit, you know, like in their uniforms and all the Nazi stuff. And he tried to convince von Braun to join the party, you know, the Nazi party, and also join the SS. SS is Sturmstaffel, and he became a Bannführer, Oberbannführer, or a special kind of rank that only the SS had, you know, never mind. Who cares?
He changed that and became a major eventually.
Yeah, well, it was the equivalent of a major, but it was a special. They had special names for the ranks of the SS officers, as opposed to the regular German army, the Dornberger. You know, like the regular army was different from the SS. The SS were like badasses. I mean, excuse me. Well, I can say that. It's the 20.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah, they were bad. They were bad people, you know. They were very bad people. But and so it's controversial because, you know, he said so Himmler tried to convince von Braun to join the SS, and he said, look, and also take over from Dornberger, who was his boss, and he said, you know, something, no, you know, I really don't think I want to do this. You know, and Dornberger's best boss you could ever you know, hope for, and Himmler tried to tell him, look, you know, that's all a lot of bureaucracy. If you become a member of the SS, you'll have much more ability to keep things organized, And so Von Braun rebuffed him, and that was a bad thing to do. So they keep files on everybody, and so they had some files of Von Braun's talking, saying, it's a shame that we have to use these in war. I don't really want to kill people with these. We're launching these to the wrong planet. We should be trying to launch to the. He had aspirations to fly to the moon.
To fly to the moon, exactly.
To fly to the moon, which is one of the things I really, in a way, I'm very conflicted about him, because it's like I really admire that single-minded force in his personality that caused him to work on this thing single-mindedly by whatever means that was available to him. That kind of, and so the army was there, and they had the money for him, and
well, it says that like right here. I mean, at least this person, Gestapo really had arrested von Braun, free by the intervention of General Dornberger and armaments.
Yeah. Sure, yeah. So they went all there. That's Albert Speer. So Albert Speer was not really that he wasn't really one of the really bad Germans. But I mean, he was high up in the party and all that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling here, but it's all interesting stuff.
So to Americans.
Yeah, so let's cut to the chase here. The Russians were advancing in 1945, January of 1945, and von Braun and a number of other scientists had their offices and laboratory work at Peenemünde. Peenemünde had already been kind of it had been bombed earlier, and so the SS had moved the production to a different facility that was better protected, and also they had the slaves to work on it just because they could. Von Braun made a video presentation to Hitler directly, von Braun and Dornberger, and I know all these things because I've watched interviews with them in the 70s, from the 1970s.
You were alive at the same time they were alive.
I was, yes, and I when I was little, I remember Werner von Braun. Okay, somehow he's been erased from history. It's like it seems like
has he been erased? I mean, not in my view. But
I don't know. I was talking to some adults the other day, younger adults, and they didn't know who he was.
Well, I mean, like most adults don't know anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, were they in the space industry?
No.
Okay, then I wouldn't expect them to.
Okay, so that's why.
I realize people don't know anything.
But I promise you, when I was 11 years old, Werner von Braun was a household name.
Oh, really?
Yes. He was known. He was on television. Okay, he worked with
different time then.
Walt Disney.
He
worked with Walt Disney. Okay, I promise you that he was in the 60s. Actually, even in the 50s and 60s, he was a household name, and so. But anyway, so the Russians were coming. They got conflicting orders. One general said, "You will stop work immediately and take up arms and die for the fatherland," and then another general said, "No, you're going to pack up all your records and move them to to another place, a more secure area." So they opted for that. They moved west, which is where they wanted to go, because they had already talked about this, and they said they want
to surrender to the U.S. and not the Russians.
They wanted to surrender to the Americans, not. They didn't want to surrender to the British. The British were never as warm to von Braun as the Americans, and he didn't want to surrender to the French either. So they were moving around, and General Dornberger kind of manipulated things, and the SS had a guard detail that was guarding them at that time, possibly even with the idea that they would. If things got really bad, maybe the SS would rub them out, would eliminate them. Von Braun thinks that the SS, the guards that were in charge of them were possibly wanted to use them as a bargaining chip, in order to secure their own safety and that kind of thing. But at some point, they ended up in in 45. This was around
May 2nd. May 2nd.
Okay, April, May. That time is when they were moving. He broke his arm earlier, like several months earlier, in a serious car accident because they were trying to drive at night without headlights because you get shot at from airplanes and that kind of thing. So it was a very serious accident. The driver of the car got killed, and he broke his arm, and he was convalescing all during this time. Actually, he was in the hospital. So one of the guys from Dornberger came and said, "Get your stuff. We're moving out." And they took him to a ski resort in the Alps. It was a very nice place. In May, the snow was still on the ground, and so they said they got word that the French were around, and then they heard that the Americans. And they sent his brother. His brother went down, took a bicycle down to make contact with the Americans. The Americans, the first Americans they encountered, and you have to understand also this is after Germany had surrendered, so it wasn't nearly as dangerous.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, so they had gotten word that Hitler was dead, and then there was an armistice, right, or a ceasefire and surrender. So it wasn't nearly as dangerous, okay, as it was. And so he made contact with Americans. And this picture is, I don't know who all of these other people are in the picture, but this is a picture.
I can tell you, to this guy to the left here is U.S. Counterintelligence Corps agent Charles Stewart. This person here is Herbert Axter, wartime chief of staff at Peenemünde missile base. This guy. Then this is that's von Braun. This guy hiding behind is Dieter Huzel, Huzel, assistant to von Braun.
Okay, he was one of the scientists that was interviewed also in this.
And this person is von Braun's younger brother, Magnus von Braun.
Yeah,
and
Magnus.
Lastly, this person on the right is the engineer Hans Lindenberg.
So all of these guys came to America. It was something called Operation Paperclip. The Americans had also intercepted, or they had found. Von Braun had ordered that the paperwork and all the research materials be hidden in a mine, and so he told the Americans where all that stuff was, and also they captured about 90. The parts of about 90 V2 rockets, and those were all packed up. Yeah, they were all in pieces, and so that's what happened. They took them to Fort Bliss in.
You sound much better just now.
What?
You were sounding strange from my perspective. All right, but keep going.
Yeah, I apologize. I mean, there is some kind of feedback, or I don't know what.
Project Paperclip. All right.
Project Paperclip. Right.
So they took German, Austrian engineers, scientists, and technicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He took them to Fort Bliss in way out in West Texas. What's that? What's the city way out in West Texas? What's it called?
El Paso.
El Paso. Yeah. The West Texas town of El Paso. And so imagine like these Germans, aristocratic Germans, and they take them way out there, and they were prisoners. Formerly, they were prisoners. They were being held because the Americans wanted them to help with the rocket program. Remember, the nuclear bomb, the atomic bomb, had been invented at this time, and so rockets were an obvious thing to use for delivering nuclear weapons, and they knew the Russians were very interested in all of that. The Russians also got a lot of German scientists, and I read an article that von Braun wrote in the late 50s where he talked about the story of his life, and he said that none of the scientists, he called it the cream of the crop of German scientists, rocket scientists, came to America. The Russians did get a contingent of them, but he told this story about after the hostilities had ceased, the Russians reopened one of the plants, and they advertised and wanted all of the German scientists in the Russian sector to come there. They would rehire them and bring their families and all that kind of stuff. So that and they said, we're going to start building the rockets, and they started working on the rockets again. And then the Russians held a party for the German scientists that were in the Russian sector, and the party finished up at midnight. And then at 3 a.m., the Russians came in and they rounded up everybody, put them in trucks, took them to the rail, everyone, scientists, wives, sisters, babies, everybody. They put them and they took them to some undisclosed, some secret base in Russia, where they. So it was a really bad scene. And so the Russians, took them that way. But and then also von Braun said that when they were leaving
Operation Paperclip, I think, right?
So now the Russians had their own the Russians had their own rocket scientist. I think his name was Korolev.
Yes, Korolev.
And he was very skilled also. Von Braun told another story before they left in Peenemünde. There was this girl named Maria that he had been
seeing.
Seeing, and he said, he wrote in the article that I read, it says he watched her from being an awkward teen to ripe maidenhood.
Sorry, are you serious?
Yeah, and before he left, he went to visit her, and and he mentioned, that they didn't, so he said it was a serious situation because he was leaving there. He says, I got to go, but I'll come get you, another time. Another thing, he was worried about his parents. And I never did get his parents did finally make it out, and he married Maria, after the war, while they were in El Paso. He got leave to go back to Europe, followed by army, people, the American guards, who wanted to make sure
that they were making sure that he wasn't going to do anything.
No, they want to make sure he didn't get killed by the Russians, So,
Maria von Braun or von Quistra.
Yeah. So that was really a pretty intense romance, and she came to America, and she was a personality all through. Yeah.
Oops, I don't know what this is. Oh, this is genealogy. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not related to this person. But anyways, here's what she looked like, that picture.
Yeah. Anyway, he was in love with her. They were in love, and he went there and married her and brought her back to America. They moved him from El Paso to Alabama.
Yes.
Alabama.
Why Alabama?
Alabama, because they had the Redstone arsenal there, so that was a place where they made munitions during the war.
Okay.
Right.
But so this was not NASA yet, because that didn't exist.
No. NASA didn't come until several years later. But he became a personality in America. He knew what he needed to do to promote rocket and space flight, which is what he was trying to do.
Time he goes on TV, like you said, he was a household name, so he was on TV all the time.
He got connected with Walt Disney, especially, and also Arthur Clarke.
How did he manage that?
What do you mean?
How did he get in touch? Oh, you're saying he himself reached out to them?
He got in touch with Walt Disney, and they made they made shows in the 50s, where he would talk about, and you can watch them on YouTube. He talks
in space, Disneyland.
Yeah.
Oh
and
my, I had no idea. All right.
And if you watch this video, he has models, of what eventually became the Saturn V, the entire theory about having multi-stages and the rockets so Walt Disney made these productions that were on TV. I have seen some shows that were in the very early 50s that were not quite as polished, where it was more academic things, where he was doing some TV programs on from Johns Hopkins University. I guess it was like educational programs. And I want to say that those were dated from 1951, 52, television really didn't come online, where people were really watching television till the mid 50s, really. I think, people started having television, but by 1960, everybody had a television. So,
you grew up with television, right?
I grew up with television. It was black and white.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I mean, life wasn't black and white. I mean, we had color, just like
you had color, like your shirt had color, but obviously.
But the television was all in black and white, and so you might get the people 10,000 years in the future, or even people in the 21st century, they might get the wrong impression. Like maybe color wasn't invented. Color, like in general.
There's like, I mean, I think most sane people know that.
Most sane people know that. Yeah. Well, I'm just in case. I don't know.
Point is, von Braun was alive during that time, went on TV, regardless, even if it was black and white, he was talking about space flight.
And it's amazing. I encourage people to go on YouTube and search out those YouTube videos.
It's called Disneyland.
Disneyland, and also just Disney, television, where he's talking about the moon rocket and the trip to Mars, and then Disney produced a little kind of like a fictional film of astronauts in the rocket and landing on the moon and all that. So it's pretty interesting. So by 19 so he was working on these rockets for the Army, and Eisenhower was president at that time, and so he said, look, we can launch a satellite, a satellite around the Earth. And he thought
the engineer.
Do you hear that?
I heard von Braun saying something about it.
Spaceflight poses two problems.
Yeah, I just want
the first is, of course, to build a rocket ship.
Oh, this is not von Braun.
Second, and no less important, is to prepare for Werher von Braun,
That's it.
who is at present the chief of the Guided Missile Division of the Army's Rocket Center at Redstone Arsenal.
That's what he's saying.
He was also overall director of the development of the original V2 rocket.
Now here's a model I designed for a 4-stage orbital rocket ship.
That's him talking.
Compared to the unmanned instrument rocket, it is quite large. But the overall size and weight of the rocket is mainly determined by the 11 tons weight of this top section. This weight dictates the amount of fuel and the numbers of motors needed to produce enough power to equalize the gravitational pull of the Earth. The payload in the top section will consist of 10 crew members plus equipment. Notice the wings, small rocket motor, and landing gears.
That's enough. People can watch it on their own.
This is a section that must ultimately return the main.
All right.
Okay. So we get
his, what his voice sounds like.
I think it's very good. Okay, because he was very fluent in English.
Yeah.
And he must have learned English as a child. So I mean, a lot of people did. But he was very fluent and very articulate. And he really went native. He really became. Another thing I wanted to mention about him was that he seemed to have had some religious conversion.
Really?
in Texas. Yeah.
Well,
So
Texas
because
is a place to do that. All right, go on.
he started talking about God and you can he was not religious when he was in the SS. But
Nazis believe in. I forget. Whatever.
what?
SS, like they were Nazis, right?
Yeah. The Schutzstaffel. Okay. But
Okay.
I do
Religion was
believe
not-
him.
Go on.
I do believe him when he says that he was reluctant. He was not really on board with all that stuff, but he and I try to put myself in his place. I don't think I would have done that. I think I would have
You have,
but
I mean, people are complicated, I suppose.
that's why he's a very complicated person. So in Alabama, he was working on the Army rocket, and the Eisenhower didn't want to use the Army rocket for launching into. This is interesting because he didn't want to use the Army rocket because he wanted the space effort by the United States to be a civilian effort, right? So there was an independent rocket that was being developed. It was still military. It was the Navy rocket, but it was sort of considered more civilian and had civilian applications. That was called the Explorer series. That was attached to Van Allen, the Van Allen, scientist. And I'll tell you something. I have a letter from Van Allen when he was alive.
Really?
Yeah.
Written to you?
Yeah.
Do you have it with you?
I don't have it at my fingertips, but when I was in graduate school and I was defending my PhD, I prepared a paper to go to the Journal of Geophysical Research, and Van Allen was the editor. And so I wrote to him with my paper, sent it FedEx and all that stuff. And he wrote back to me, and he said, he addressed me as Dr. Kramer. Of course, I had not finished my PhD at that time, but he addressed me as Dr. Kramer. You've written this excellent paper, blah, blah, blah. And
James Alfred Van Allen, right?
Yeah, Van Allen. And he discovered the Van Allen radiation belts, and built the instrumentation that went on these early rockets that orbited the Earth, right? So
this guy.
Yeah. So anyway, Van Allen addressed me as Dr. Kramer, and he's a very prominent scientist. And so while I was in graduate school, I did like some kind of brown bag. You know what a brown bag talk is, like at lunchtime?
Yeah, they give you a brown bag, or you bring your own, and you listen to somebody talk.
Right. So I was given the talk about my research, right? And so and this was before PowerPoint. This was when we had these slides. They're like clear slides, and you put them on an overhead projector. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of our audience has never even heard of such a thing, but you put them on an
overhead projectors are still around.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was overhead projector, and that's how you would do your presentation. And so instead of PowerPoint, you would write them out by hand usually. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty creative. So I do a lot of stuff. But anyway, so I made. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So I made a slide of Van Allen's letter addressing me as Dr. Kramer, and I circled Dr. Kramer, and I put that up there. And so I asked the faculty, I said, well, Van Allen, he's calling me Dr. Kramer. Doesn't this make it can't I just, doesn't that mean I'm done? It's like, isn't it like
done?
like, and at that time, this was the time when, the Star Trek Next Generation, everybody was watching that, right?
Right.
And so there was a character named Wesley Crusher who was like he was brat, It's like everybody hated this character, Wesley Crusher. But anyway, he got promoted and became part of Starfleet because of a field promotion. So I tried to appeal that because and that was, So I tried to appeal to the faculty that because Van Allen has addressed me as Dr. Kramer, that implies that I've been promoted in the field, and they didn't go for that. So, but
unfortunately.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get back to von Braun. We talked.
I know we kind of went off on a slight tangent here.
So, but it's pretty.
Hey, it's great that you can connect your own life to this. So your life connected to Van Allen. Yeah. How is Van Allen connected to von Braun?
Right. Only 3 degrees of separation.
I know, not bad.
No, 2 degrees. Van Allen, and then von Braun. Right. And then von Braun to Adolf Hitler. So there's 4 degrees of separation between me and Adolf Hitler. Don't repeat that.
I don't need to repeat that. That's quotable though. 4 degrees. Oh, I better not say it. Okay, go on. Okay, so basically, Van Allen decided to talk to von Braun, and because von Braun needed a scientist.
No, that's not it. That's not it.
Oh, that's not it. Okay.
Van Allen was in charge of the science He was like in charge of the science instrument that was going to be flown to orbit the Earth. Now the Russians were threatening to send somebody around the Earth, and then the year 1957 came around. 1957 was the International Geophysical Year. And so it was supposed to be all of this cooperation in the world because of science. That's like a theme in the 20th century where people had this idea that, the scientists will cooperate together to do this high-minded,
Is that not what happens in reality?
Right. But I've alluded to it before with Einstein and,
yeah. So go on. 1957 International.
Okay. So at near the end of 1957, the Russians launched a satellite that went around the moon. It's called Sputnik. It went around
the Earth.
Around the Earth, yeah, around the Earth, and they came to von Braun, and von Braun was at a he was at dinner or something like. They whispered it to him, and he said, "I'll be damned." Okay, and so then they came around. So the administration says, "All right, we need to launch one." They launched the Explorer series, which was not von Braun's rocket. Okay, and it blew up. It was not successful.
I thought Explorer 1, it wasn't successful.
The first rocket that they launched was not successful. Okay, and the satellite itself, but the rocket that they used, and I thought that the name of the rocket was called the Explorer also, but I may be
launched on first spacecraft to detect the Van Allen radiation belt. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it was eventually launched on the where does it show the launch, the rocket? It was the Juno. Okay, you see Juno?
Yeah,
Juno.
1.
Okay, that was not von Braun's rocket. Well, no, that was von Braun's rocket.
The Vanguard TV3. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That was the first attempt. I'm confused. Sorry.
That's all good.
Sorry. So that was the one that was sort of associated with the Navy, and that Eisenhower wanted to be used because it was a more civilian and more, American effort. But it failed on the first attempt. So then they told von Braun, okay, you're up. And so von Braun and his army manager, said, yeah, well, we can do it. And they were ready to launch 2 years earlier. There's some kind of interesting thing about the idea of launching a rocket that flies over another country's territory was controversial at the time. So it could be considered, because the airspace above a country.
How high up does it go? Right now, what do? We don't even talk about it.
So yeah, we don't. Yeah, but at that time that was controversial, and so I think that there's some thought that maybe Eisenhower wanted the Russians to launch first, just so they could get over that he wouldn't hear them griping about how we were overflying their airspace, although they were overflying with U-2 planes later on and so forth. But that's another story. So, so von Braun's rocket was called the Redstone, and that's a first generation improved away from the V2. You can at Johnson Space Flight Center. I drive past at the rockets
Juno
there.
1, right?
The Juno 1.
That's what it's called.
The Juno 1 is yes, okay.
Yeah, it's derived from the Jupiter C sounding rocket from Redstone.
Right.
Family.
The Redstone. So these rockets. These rockets are it's a series, and so he called them the Jupiter and so forth, and then the next in the series was called Saturn, and he said the only reason that they used Saturn was, well, Saturn comes after Jupiter,
Well, that after Juno? You're saying it was Jupiter?
No, all of these series were Jupiter. These were all Jupiter, part of the Jupiter C or Jupiter series of rockets. They were derivatives of the Redstone rocket. The Redstone was derived directly from the V2, because because in Texas they started doing research as early as the 40s with the V2 rockets that they had captured, and they had about 90 of them, and they continued to work on those, and then it's so he invented those engines. The engines that are used on these rockets were directly derived from the German research. So, and then came the Saturn V, the Saturn series, and the moon launch.
What about the Mercury?
Project Mercury was, I don't know that, Project Mercury were all done with those rockets. They had a series of them. So some of these are still used today. Yeah. But I'm not a real authority on the different rockets and stuff like that. I didn't really study that.
Back to von Braun. So, okay, so you managed to get Juno launching up Explorer 1, the first American satellite.
So
he decided we're going to go to the moon?
Well, he decided he was going to go to the moon in 1922.
Okay. Opportunity to go to the moon now.
Yeah, so now he really had an opportunity. So it's really a life fulfilled if you think about it. It's like it's somebody who was single-minded working on this all his life, right? And so it's a real amazing. He had in mind that the Americans would that the United States would use would build Saturn V rockets, and we would explore the universe, explore the solar system with them.
So in 1960, von Braun's division of the Army Ballistic Missile Agency, this was still in Alabama, right, was transferred to a new civilian space agency called NASA.
NASA, yeah. So yeah, NASA's really a product of Dwight Eisenhower. Eisenhower, kind of like created that. The amount of money that was going into the space program at that time amounted like 2 or 3% of the entire U.S. economy.
Which of these guys is von Braun?
Neither one of them, to my understanding.
You're right. Neither one. That was a trick question.
Okay. I don't
know why those pictures are. Okay.
So
British and German.
So von Braun was a real promoter, and he knew how to, I don't want to say manipulate, that's not the right word. He seemed to have become a real red-blooded American. He got naturalized in 1955, and he made all kinds of comments about that it was most important place. He said things like, one of the reasons that he came to work for America so that they knew that they had something in this rocket technology, even in the 40s when they surrendered to the Americans. But what he said was he wanted to surrender the rockets to a nation that believed in the Bible. So it was,
Really?
yes, so it was almost like a, and I think he was influenced by the religious
Was he religious?
influences. He would, yes, he became not, he wasn't like, you know, he wasn't a Billy Graham or anything like that, but he would mention this from time to time. He was also all for civil rights, and he made speeches in the early 60s about how NASA would be, you know, um, um, all about equal opportunity for everyone, no matter what you look like, whatever race or religion you are,
Right.
and that, and he, you know, and I believe him. I think that he did have a real epiphany, as it were, about that, and that he was driven by those kind of religious. But
Wow,
so,
that's an interesting. Like, this is something I never realized.
hmm
Like,
so
record on civil rights. Yeah.
yeah, so he made a number of speeches, and that's Alabama, you know.
Isn't the Alabama governor at that point extremely racist? George Wallace.
No, not at that time. George Wallace was so,
Or
but
yeah,
you
somebody.
know, anyway,
Yeah.
he had control of the federal government, and Huntsville, Alabama is today, you know, like a very progressive um, place. So, and he was a, you know, von Braun was also very much interested in music, and so was Maria.
Mhm.
They really kind of like promoted a orchestra in Huntsville. So he's very much, I don't know anymore, but in those days he was very much loved by the people in Huntsville, Alabama, and um, so that's kind of, we're kind of getting close to the end of the story here. In the about 19, you know, of course, Project Apollo lasted a few years. Von Braun had the idea that we would be building hundreds of Saturn V's, and so that was part of the impulse for developing the center at Michoud in Mississippi, and then
That's another facility.
yeah, Stennis,
Stennis
um,
is in Mississippi. Yeah, I passed by it.
Stennis,
I went to their.
and
They have that. That you can take a. They have a space center there too, and you can take a tour of their rocket facilities.
Stennis, and I think Michoud, which is the rocket, which I I thought that was in Mississippi too, but or maybe it's in Michoud, Michoud.
Michoud Assembly Facility in
Yeah,
Louisiana.
Louisiana, yeah.
Who would have? I did not even know there was a NASA facility there. What?
Yeah. So one of the things about that is, you know, you spread it all over the country, and you get, you know, so it's money that goes to different places, you know, but also it's, you know, like the country is very productive, you know, so we have this capability.
Why is there? Why is it, oh, so they build rockets there?
What?
Do they build rockets there?
Yes, that's where the external tank for the shuttle was built, and other there, and it's an active place. So anyway, but anyway, so he had this idea, and but you know, but and then so and then the next president, you know, so we did the rockets all, you know, Kennedy in 1960. 62 made a speech at Rice University where he said, you know, we're going to go to the moon at the end of the month, at the end of the decade, and
we did the moon.
Yeah, he was great friends with Kennedy, and I think Kennedy getting shot really upset him. He was pretty upset about that. He told he did phone. He said that he telephoned some weeks later. He telephoned Mrs. Kennedy, Jacqueline Kennedy, and said, "We are going to make John Kennedy's dream, you know, the direction that he wanted to go with this. We're going to make it happen." And so he did by 1969. They had an accident in 67 with Apollo 1 where they had 3 astronauts who were killed.
Okay.
So that was a setback.
Was that 19? You said 1967?
I think 67, Apollo 1.
Yeah. That was.
And I don't really want to talk about what happened there, but there was a fire. So so by 1970, Richard Nixon was president, and they kind of like talked it up, like, well, we're going to continue, going to go to Mars, right? But by the time the budget was settled, it seems like they just completely forgot about that. They were pressing for the shuttle, and
did von Braun ever support the shuttle?
Yes, von Braun did support the shuttle.
Okay.
In 72, they moved him to headquarters in Washington, D.C. And I think he didn't really want to go. I think he liked Alabama. I think he liked where he was there. But they wanted him in headquarters to continue that work. The director of NASA at that time was a guy named Lowe, Lowe. And I'm not sure that I don't know what the story there was. It seems like von Braun was sort of starting to be pushed aside. And there may have been some antagonism or some rumors about that, but I don't really know. He started to not be listened to as much. And so he finally, I think in 70, well, I don't know.
He retired from NASA on May 26, 1972, according to Wikipedia.
So 72, yes, okay, that's actually the date that I had in mind, but it seemed too early. But yes, so he retired from NASA, he went to work for contractors, and he continued to talk about, to try to promote the use of satellites for Earth resources and in other countries and that sort of thing. And then I think in 74 or 75, he went to the doctor and they found.
Before I continue there, he also developed the idea of a space camp for kids. Did you know that?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think I read that also. Space camp and all kinds of stuff like that. Like when he was in Alabama, he would go to high schools or and he, people would write to him and he would write them back. And so he was all about promoting. He knew what he needed to do to get political support for spaceflight. And he was good at it. And he was good at it in 1922. When he was 10, so
that's
anyway,
so interesting. Like this guy throughout his entire life was dedicated.
I'm telling you that's the picture that I get. So he was diagnosed with cancer, with some kidney or liver or some kind of cancer in
1973 during a routine medical examination, and there was no way to control it back then.
It was just a serious condition, right? So he had surgery a couple times, and then he was awarded a medal, some kind of medal, in the hospital room. I think
Medal of Science.
Medal of Science. Yeah, by Gerald Ford. No, Jimmy Carter.
This thing. This fancy.
Yeah. Oh, that's a gorgeous. I love that.
How would you get one of these? Do you have to you have to make a major contribution, right?
Yeah, you need to invent the Saturn V.
Well, I mean,
something.
Leonard, do you have one?
No, and I never will. I am.
Okay, it has to be outstanding contribution. All right.
But so he died in 1977. Finally, they gave him he was sick, and they gave him the medal when he was in the hospital. And the words that I heard that he said was he just turned to Maria and he said, "This is a great country, isn't it?" Or something like that. Isn't this a great country? So I greatly admire Werner von Braun. He's right up there with some of the most important people that I admire. And I'm conflicted about him. There's a lot to be conflicted about. He I don't know. I that's all I know about it. I guess I'd like to hear what other people might want to say about him. So
Yeah, I'd be
and
definitely be interested in that as well.
I think he is buried in Virginia.
Did you also know he wrote a Martian science fiction novel?
No, I didn't know about that. That's interesting. It doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah,
He was also a musician. He also played music.
so he had many different skills. Let's just say.
Well, the people that were interviewed about him and talked about him says, look, one of those guys in the picture that in Germany that we saw was interviewed like in the 70s, and he was saying like, I know about propulsion, and my other colleague, he knows about guidance, but Werner, he knew about propulsion and guidance and composition of the fins in the graphite fins that they used inside of the nozzles of the rockets, and he just knew everything about it. And so it was like he was like a man for all seasons, but focused on this thing. He said,
by the way,
oh, that's cool, I think I'm gonna buy that.
This so fun fact that I just learned while you were talking, I was doing a little bit of research. This book did not get published until 2006. It was rejected by like 18 different publishers when he initially tried to get it published.
Oh man, what a bunch of dumbasses.
Yeah. So it was written by von Braun in German in 1949 and translated the book into English and was published finally in 2006. So the German text remains unpublished, if you can believe it.
Okay, so sometimes when things are translated by other people, they don't come out very good. But if he translated it or he assisted with the translation or did the translation, then it's probably pretty good. But
so von Braun submitted the English manuscript to 18 U.S. publishers, but was rejected by all of them.
Wow, amazing.
So yeah, but anyways,
yeah.
Some of it
he said that when he was in his teens, when he was a teenager, and they were getting involved in rockets, he bought a book by a guy named Oberg. I don't remember the Oberg, but Oberg was the scientist who they talked about the rocket. He had the rocket equation, and it was very technical, and so he sent away for the book. What?
Like like the rocket
scientist? Oberth, yeah.
This guy, Hermann Oberth.
Yeah, Hermann Oberth. He was.
Yeah.
I think something tells me he was German, but he came from Romania. There's something
yeah,
peculiar about that. But anyway, so Oberth was the almost kind of like the father of the physics of how you do multiple stage rockets to go to the moon and that kind of thing. And so he had a book. He wrote a book, and so von Braun. This is in the 1920s. He saw an ad and he sent away for the book, and when the book came, it was all. This is in the words of von Braun in an interview. He says, "Well, I got the book and I looked at it. It was all full of equations, and he used the word appalled. He says, I don't know what to do with this. So what did he do? He goes to his math teacher and he says, what do I have to learn in order to understand what's in this book?"
Right.
So he says, he was working on cars at that time. They were trying to build an automobile, right, with his brother, and so he kind of got distracted. His grades were not very good, but then when he went to his teacher, the teacher sort of refocused him. I got to understand all of this stuff. So he needed to understand the mathematics. So he set his life on his life. He reoriented his life so that he could learn the math that was needed to understand the equations in that book, and it's just it's just amazing, And then so anyway, that's all I can think of to talk about. But
there's quite a lot. This is really interesting. I like learning about these historical lessons because, like, if you just even if you work in the field, you just I don't know. You don't really think. I don't really think about it. Yet. A lot of people don't. I suppose you probably do, since you like history.
Yeah, I like history. Yeah,
I like history too.
Yeah. So, but this is a space show, but so we always try to, anyway.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it's because these are real people and they're complicated, and there's a lot of things happening throughout history, which and different characters. Like, for instance, I did not know that you are so closely related, like in the degrees of freedom, from certain people that we all know in history, like Van Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah, like immediately.
Right. So
I did not know Van Allen knew about. I guess worked with von Braun as well. So that's and all that.
Well, I mean,
the entertainment and education aspect of what von Braun did, that I guess I really had no idea. Why you lived through that, Leonard? So you actually
as a child, 11 years old, I knew who von Braun was.
Yeah.
Okay,
is that how it's gonna be? Or do you think, like, was it because, like, back then people talked about, like, spaceflight more?
Well, when somebody landed on the moon, that I think everybody had the idea that the world was different. That was at that time, and in the focus of that moment, that was thought to be like one of the most important things to happen in human history. I mean, and people recognized it. You can find interviews, like television interviews, with Arthur Clarke and who's the other science fiction guy who wrote the Starship Troopers? Heinlein, was it Heinlein or?
Yeah, it was Heinlein.
Heinlein or I can't remember. But anyway, if you listen to them, like when they're being interviewed on television, and it's available on YouTube. It's like they're almost dreaming. I saw it on television. Okay, it's different from actually seeing it. So,
okay. Live TV though.
Live TV, yes, live from the moon. The Eagle has landed. Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been remarkable.
Mm-hmm. It was black and white. People had color TVs, but we didn't. We didn't have a color TV.
Is the moon black and white?
Yes, it's sort of gray. Yeah, I guess there's one of the astronauts said, "Hey, come over here. There's orange soil."
Right. No. It's not completely black and white. All right, but that's the point. Point is, back in that time, humans we just landed on the moon, and there were a lot of excitement.
It seemed like a very pivotal moment in human history. We thought that maybe.
I'm just speculating here, but do you anticipate similar levels of anticipation when we go back with Artemis?
I hope so, but I really see the commitment to it is not. We're like doing it a little at a time at a very slow pace, because like I said, at that time, about 3% of the economy was directed toward the space program. So there was money pouring into tens of thousands of people who were working on it, right? So
now it's like, I don't know. You got everybody's doing different things. It's not a pure focus on space.
And unfortunately, that has been a great disappointment in my life, because I thought, when the shuttle came on, because I remember reading about the shuttle in the early 70s, like in National Geographic and everything like that. So I thought, wow, this is going to be cool. And they're going to be launching every 2 weeks, right? And
That's what they advertised it as.
And they never achieved that. So it was a great disappointment. And I think that technically, the shuttle was great technical achievement, a great engineering scientific achievement, but I think that as a practical matter, it's a failure. It was a failure. Like there was this vision, right, that we'd have this reusable airplane and people would take off and they would land again, but it was too expensive. It's not practical, because in order to fly into space, you need to carry these wings with you, and you need to have landing gear and all this stuff that you need in order to return and make it reusable. And so it's not practical.
That actually looked, the space shuttle kind of looked like in that little video clip we played half an hour ago, what von Braun showed. That thing, right?
Yeah, I think he meant for that. Yes, I think he meant for that to return to space by not in the manner that we actually adopted, where it would come through the atmosphere. But I'd encourage people to seek those videos out and watch them and enjoy Werner von Braun for his own enthusiasm. You know, he's probably one of the most enthusiastic promoters of space flight.
I wonder, to our viewers out there, what are you enthusiastic and passionate about?
Sure, if people should write in, leave comments.
What are you?
What are you enthusiastic about?
I mean, Leonard, what about you? What are you enthusiastic about?
What am I enthusiastic about?
Yeah, what are you enthusiastic about?
I'm enthusiastic about doing this podcast and talking to people. I'm enthusiastic about cleaning up my kitchen because I've got a lot of stuff accumulating on my refrigerator behind me.
There's nothing like terribly private stuck on there, right? It's just
not really.
Well, I mean, you gotta be careful. You don't want this is a publicly broadcasted show. You don't want it on there.
So anyway,
all right.
That's all I had to say.
To our viewers in the future, 10,000 years from now, I guess even nowadays, barely 50 years from back then, von Braun's no longer a household name. I don't know. 10,000 years from now, most of us probably, who knows? Who knows what you remember? But you know what? This show is about one of the founders of rocketry, in at least a pivotal figure in taking humanity to the moon. So no doubt there should be some recognition even from those 10,000 years.
I would think so. Yeah.
So
yeah.
All right. With all that said, probably those folks in the future, you thinking about going to the moon and all that is probably a piece of cake to you. It's probably like something you do on a weekend.
Right. But for us, it's a big challenge, and we haven't been back in over 50 years now. And damn it.
I mean,
I've been waiting. It's a big disappointment.
Artemis is, what is it? Next year, right? Going to go free return trajectory around the moon.
Yeah, I hope so.
But that's still not a landing, I suppose. It's going to take a few more years.
Yeah, and then of course the Boeing Starliner, which is just trying to go to ISS, is stuck there. Maybe we should do another show about.
You want to talk about the Starliner?
No. Let's just see what happens. I am not up for that.
Let's talk about science next time. I want to talk about the new telescopes and what.
Yes. Okay.
So we haven't touched upon it for a while now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So next time we're going to science. All right, everybody. All right. No UFOs today. The show is like over an hour long now. But we had a lot to talk about. So everybody out there, you know what I say, look up because you never know what you will see. Support us, patreon.com/SG2 on space.
Like, subscribe, share with your friends.
Yes, share with your friends.
Leave comments. Let me see what you. Right.
There's been no comments except the ones I've written so far. So, but you know what? Even if you don't watch this live, you can always put a comment later. So
absolutely.
All right. I will say
good night.
Good night.
Namaste.
Oh no, I knew that was happening.
Shalom.